What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode number 32 of the Untitled Chapter podcast. And today I'm bringing on Donnie Gupton to come onto the podcast to talk about how to generate leads on LinkedIn. And this is crazy. It's a little bit synchronistic, really, because Donnie has helped really grow a business from $1 million to $6 million during the Great Recession of 2009. And here we are coming into, what many would consider winter, right? And so his message is really relevant to the season that we're in and that we're headed into right now. So we'll dive into what's working, what's not working, and pretty much what are the best ways to use LinkedIn to grow your business in 2020. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Anthony John Amix podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amix. My friends call me AJ, and my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show. All right, welcome back. Now, before I bring on Donnie onto the podcast, I want to let you know a little bit about Shift. Now, Shift is a free online community designed to help coaches and course creators increase their income and impact even in times of uncertainty. And if you want to join a community of like-minded people, simply go to ajamix.com/community to request to join. It's 100% free, so simply just go to ajamix.com/community. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Donnie. He helps recruiters save time, money, and quickly drive more revenue through automated lead generation. And if you're not a recruiter, no worries. The wisdom that he's going to share with you on this podcast is actually going to serve you. He's a data 4. He's an amazing human being. And I first met Donnie back in February at Uprising 6, and he was one of the participants in the experience. And I learned he's a master at using LinkedIn to generate leads. And I also learned he helped a business grow massively back in 2009 when the economy took a big hit. So I thought it would be super cool to have him on the podcast to share some of his strategies with you and also share a little bit about his experience and lessons that he's learned from, growing a business during the last Great Recession and also some of the lessons he learned from Uprising 6. So let's bring him onto the podcast. Donnie, what up, brother? Welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So we're going to get into how to generate leads with LinkedIn and all that stuff today. But I have a lot of stuff I want to get into before that. So I haven't seen you in person since February when you came to Uprising 6. So how have you been since Uprising 6, man?
I've been good, man. I've been doing really good. The Uprising, you guys rocked at that event, dude. And as you guys challenged us, I played all out. So I got a ton out of it. And,
sure did.
It's been great because it hasn't been when you're going through that event, you're coming out of such a high. And then I got hit with some challenges in my business right away, which was great because I was able to use a lot of the tools that we were working on and some of that mindset work to kind of, steer the ship, so to speak. So yeah, things have been good, man. I'm in a great place right now. My mind is fully dialed. So
good.
And as you know, it's not an end game, right? It's an always game.
Yeah. What do you feel like's changed for you since then?
Whew. There's a lot, man. I think one of the biggest things is my ability to slow down and just be.
Nice.
And really just, this being there, but really just working on my own self-love and realizing I have nothing to prove to anybody. I don't have anything really even to prove to myself. There's nothing to prove at all. And that's actually just helped, unlock some chains of freedom. And for me to just be me and to actually, be authentic, even though you can't be authentic, because if you're being authentic, then you're not yourself, but
yep. It's
just allowing me to be myself. And there's no greater gift than that. It's impacted relationships with my kids, with my wife, with my parents, with my friends. Absolutely, man. I think the biggest thing is I just feel free and relaxed.
Nice.
Stress levels have dropped way down. So
awesome. And when you say self-love, I know there's probably a lot of people listen to this. They're like, cliche, love self, blah, blah, blah. The thing that I really appreciate and I honor about you is you came from football culture. You played college ball. You're fucking gritty as they come. And so probably even the idea of Donnie, you need to work on the self-love thing. You're like, fuck you. What are you talking about? So can you unpack that for a little bit for people of what that really means for you? This idea of self-love?
Yeah. So, for me, you're 100% right. College football guy, macho culture type of thing. And then going into places of meditation, never thought I'd be meditating at the level that I do. All the kind of stereotypes. And And so it's really, for me, is learning to love all of me in both sides, and loving the side that, yeah, I am a fiery, fired up, fierce competitor. But I'm also a nice, sweet, sensitive guy on the same side, and being okay with that. And that was one of the biggest things that I had to be okay with, is the fact that, like, as a male, that I can be a softer guy and still be very well received. And really, for me, nobody's going to probably perceive me as being a big soft guy just because of how I naturally am coming off, right? But for me, it's being okay with myself. I don't care what anybody else sees. Being okay with myself, loving, the things that I really don't like about myself, and loving the things that I really do love about myself. And I think that's one of the biggest, maybe not. I mean, speaking for myself, I think when I was thinking of self-love, is finding all the things that we love about ourselves.
Awesome.
And not accepting, like, hey, there's shit that I really don't like about Donnie, but I love him too, right?
Nice. So what has been kind of the biggest lesson you learned from the event?
Whew. Let me think about that one. I think the biggest thing that is just that I'm enough.
Yeah.
The last thing in the last day is just that I'm enough. And I mentioned it earlier, and it is just this. I've always been so programmed for success and programmed to chase and hunt, and what's the next thing, and just be okay with that right now in this moment is enough, and that's all. I'm good. And it's been able to, I've been able to help, with the kind of the things that are happening with our country right now. It's helped me really be able to serve people at a higher level, because I've been able to create more space for other people, which I think has been massive.
Awesome.
For them to have their own experience. So
what really kind of surprised you about that whole event, that experience? I feel like it's very unlike anything that's kind of on the market currently.
Yeah.
So what surprised you about it?
The roller coaster, again, to get the success out of the event comes with 100% buy-in from the person going. But what you and Jonathan do, and where you guys are able to kind of work with us and kind of take us in those high highs and those low lows. And I think the biggest thing is that the actual experience, it's not conceptual teaching, it's the experiences that you put through. That's where the breakthroughs happen. Yeah, like, I've heard the concepts. In fact, working with Jonathan for a couple of years, I've learned a lot and heard the concepts a lot of what you guys were putting us through, but actually going through the exercise and being there and having to do that, and then be raw in front of a group of people, and for a guy like me who's typically not overly emotional, crying in front of a big group of people, and then going all the way to the opposite ends of anger and, deep pits of anger, and then all the way to the euphoria of happiness. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I think the experiences that you guys put together is really where it's at, though.
Brilliant. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about like how to generate leads. And I went on your site, which is donniegupton.com, DonnieGupton.com, if you guys want to check that out. And I was really fascinated by your story. And on this podcast, I'm actually really surprised. Like, I'm not this smart. Like, I'm pretty smart, but I'm not this smart, where things like synchronistically just kind of sync up. And this is one of those things, because this is going to be releasing next week, and we're still in this whole Corona thing that's going on. Yep. And you learned how to build a business during what we are called the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. So I think you have a lot of personal wisdom that we can probably share with an audience that's going to help them through what's going on with Corona, the economic impacts that's going to have, which, I mean, who knows? It could be a lot worse than 2008, 2009. It will be what it will be. There's no reason to worry about it. It's going to be what it is. So in 2008, 2009, when everybody else was freaking out and losing their minds economically, what led you to really like doubling down on yourself and equipping yourself with the skill sets and mindsets of digital marketing?
Yeah, I think it was just, there was no other choice. This is what I had to do, so I think I don't want to give myself credit because my self-awareness wasn't at the level it is now. But I still had, going back into that driving thing, kind of the story with that is my dad and I, we had partnered after I got out of college. We worked together for a couple of years. We started to see some growth, and then the recession hit. Well, we had just moved into a brand new 8,000 square foot building, took on way more overhead. We had just signed on I think it was like a $3,000 or $4,000 yellow book contract per month. And it's kind of funny to think that like Yellow Pages was actually relevant still 12 years ago. But we had all these expenses tied up, and then boom, we had no business, no customers. We were just like everybody else, hanging on for dear life. And so for me, it was like, well, what is the effort I can do? I can't spend any more money. I can't, use money to try to drive awareness. I needed to go into pure effort. And so I started actually modeling Gary Vee, and he had Wine Library TV, and I started Flooring My Life TV. And then I just started to control what I can control. And I just started producing content like crazy. And we came out of that recession with massive growth. So it was really just realizing that, and it honestly, sometimes it's what it takes for people to get back that far into the corner of like, okay, I've got no other choice. Here we go. And I think that's really what it was, is like, all right, we've got to try to make this business work somehow. We just committed to a bunch of new overhead. It wasn't like we were just going to fold it up. It was like, let's battle. And we battled and we survived.
Now I'm curious, like your mindset a bit. Like I know you came from football culture, like,
Yep.
and so what was your mindset? Like I think it's one thing to be like, okay, we're going to do what's required. We're going to double down. We're going to do the thing. But what was really your mindset? Because I think some people would be like, well, I'm going to do it, but what's the point? Are people going to have money? Are they not going to have money? So how did you deal with that kind of that hurdle?
Yeah, I think it's commitment to the long game, and so going through something like football culture, you people see what happens on Saturdays and Sundays on their TV. And what's really happening is what's happening, Sunday through Sunday through Friday. And so having that, we used to, in football, you have to do, and really any sport, but the mindset is like, there's always a set of grunt work you have to do for, a 60-minute reward on a Saturday. And so that was the thing, is we knew, okay, well, we may not get the customer right now, but if we continue to do this and put the goodwill out into the marketplace, then now when the time comes, we're going to be in a much better position. We're going to be in a position to succeed because we've prepared to succeed. And that was kind of the mindset, is like, all right, I knew that the work would be there, but I was also okay with kind of like the delayed end result. And
Awesome.
it worked out exactly like that. So.
Now, I know you went from, because I think you published this on the website, or maybe you said it before in pre-chat, I don't remember, but you said you went from like $1 million and then recession hit. And then on the other side of that, you grew the business to 6 million, which is
Yep.
huge. I'm curious, in that pocket of uncertainty, were you guys just staying and maintaining $1 million? Did you guys take a dip? Did you guys grow? Like what happened there?
Yeah, we kind of dipped out, I think, the first year a little bit. And then we were just kind of like, it was like the minimal staff that we had to be able to get by. So it was my dad, myself, my sister, I think was working with us already at this time. And then we just had our crews that were installing. We just had the minimum team. So there was a little bit of a dip, and then we could start to see it, like as soon as you could start to see the economy wasn't recovered, but it was kind of starting to turn. And once it started to turn, because we were making more noise than everybody else was in relax mode and like sit and wait mode. And because we were the noisiest, and keep in mind, this was also kind of the start of a lot of the social media and digital, right? So we were able to gain a lot of market share. And that was one of the cool things that came out of it. We went from just like a small mom and pop shop. I mean, my dad built this company from the ground up. It's a great story. I mean, growing up, he had a van in our front yard, and that was his business was run out of our house in a van. By the time I got to college, he grew the business basically to support me going to college. And then when I got out, it was kind of like, hey, come work here until you find your gig. It wasn't the long-term plan, but then, here we are in this recession and trying to survive and get through it. So, yeah, I mean, it was amazing what came from that, just by having more of the long-term vision, because we then became a player in the market. We're in the Bay Area, in San Jose Bay Area. And now, my dad's company is still out there and still thriving and surviving, but we built a reputation to where now they honestly, they don't need to do much marketing, because the reputation, I mean, we still have a solid marketing.
Sure.
But the reputation kind of takes care of itself, because we're able to capture audience and eyeballs then. So it's important to have the noise, be noisy in the times where, we may not get the end result right now, but that'll certainly be my approach as we head into this next, whatever's going to happen here.
Now, somebody listening to this, they may, be inspired because they're like, cool, well, here's a dude who doubled down. He played the long game. He did what was required. They went through the dip, but they came out and they grew on the other side of that. But maybe people are thinking, well, that was 2000, 2009, or 2008, 2009. You're writing, really, that was like a transfer of wealth. In my opinion, the whole social media marketing wave, I saw it coming in at that point in time. I was like, I'm going to ride that as well. And then the question becomes like, in today's marketplace, it's like, well, is there too much noise? I mean, everybody's on LinkedIn, social media, et cetera. Is there too much noise going on to be able to actually succeed and go through this? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there is a ton of noise. There's no arguing that. And everybody's popping up and everybody can, claim themselves to be an expert. But the opposite side of that is there's really no other choice. Your choice is to be a part of the noise or not. And then it's like anything else is you have to develop a skill. So the skillful people actually cut through the noise because they've practiced this game. So that's what people don't understand is like, it's not just about like making the decision to hop online. Like that's step one. But then it's like, well, I need to get good at this. I need to find out. And this is why I think it's so important to have a target market is when I can create my messaging, knowing where my market's at and what they're going through, then that's easier to cut through the noise. But so many people come in with more of a general approach and start to create, but they don't even know who they're creating for. So if I know exactly who I'm creating for, and I know what their pains and their problems are, then cutting through the noise is going to be a heck of a lot easier. But the noise is real, but like I said, the alternative is to do nothing, which is going to put you in a worse spot. So,
Awesome.
It's funny because you bring that up because I have a lot of my clients that will bring that up as a kind of an objection sometimes, or even prospective clients that are like, oh, well, I don't want to just be another guy posting content. Well, you know what? Chances are you're going to be another guy posting content for a while until you really start to really get into this is who I am. I'm going to share this. I'm okay with this. I don't care if I piss anybody off with this shit either. Right. And that's when the authentic comes. And I've been working towards that. And even coming back from, going back to the uprising, I came back from that and I put a flag in the ground and dropped a post that rocked the world. I mean, it shook some people because it was just so honest and raw. And I lost followers from it. But the most important thing is I gained followers because it's that whole push pull, right?
Yeah.
Being conservative in marketing isn't good marketing.
Yeah.
Right?
And do you want to share with people what that post was? Like, you don't have to share the entire post, but like what the stance was?
Yeah. I mean, being very blunt, it was just about taking my fucking mask off. And how essentially like I was creating really good content, but I was creating it through a filter and I was living my life through a filter and who I thought that everybody wanted to be instead of just being like Donnie. And, I dropped a couple F-bombs in there, which most people weren't used to, because, normally in my casual conversation, I'm going to swear, I'm going to talk, I'm going to be chill.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a vulgar guy, not that I'm out
Sure.
of control, but with my social media, my presence was different. Right. And so I'm not telling everybody here to drop an F-bomb and that's the moral of the story, but that's where I got some pushback from my market was like, oh, you shouldn't cuss. That's unprofessional and this, that, and the other. And it's like, great. Well, if you're worried about that, we just did each other a favor. We're not going to be a good fit to work together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people need to understand is like, it's about attracting your ideal client. It's not about attracting anybody. And when you really want to attract an ideal client, you need to be your authentic self because that's who's going to pull towards you.
Makes sense.
It's also kind of that, abundance versus scarcity mindset is realizing there's enough people that will like me just for who I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, do you think LinkedIn is a good tool to really cut through the noise as we're coming into this downturn?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, if you're B2B, LinkedIn has got to be a part of your strategy right now. B2B with LinkedIn it's easy to target. And there's still, I'd say the window's short right now, but there's still an opportunity to still be kind of a little bit of an early adopter because, a couple years ago, it started to really become more of a popular platform where people are actually posting content and actually engaging with it. So, yeah, I've developed some ways to really, build my brand and generate, conversations and leads from LinkedIn. So I think it's got to be a part of it, especially, like I said, if you're B2B.
What do you think that window is for people listening? Because you said it's a short window. What do you think that window is?
Now, I think you've got, I think it's like anything. I think you probably have about another year still to really hop on and still be an early adopter. I think in a year, though, you're going to see almost everybody on LinkedIn in some way, shape, or form. But, the shift that's happening with LinkedIn is LinkedIn, for most people, they view LinkedIn as the resume platform, right? It's the place where, you go get a new job. And where the shift has happened on LinkedIn is that it's actually a great way to generate leads. So that's the shift. That's the year that you have. I think LinkedIn's obviously going to be around and relevant for a while, but going back into the noise, more and more people are showing up every day and becoming more of a thought leader and content producer on LinkedIn. So, you definitely want to be a part of that conversation.
And so when you say B2B, let's just clarify that. Do you mean does anybody who's doing business with businesses? So that could be a coach who's working with other coaches or a coach who's coaching other businesses.
Yep.
It doesn't just necessarily have to be a big corporation who's selling to other big.
Yeah. And I'm glad Glad you clarified that. Yeah, it's not corp to corp; it's person to person, and that's really
Awesome.
how LinkedIn is going to work. And that's what makes it so powerful is that it's profile to profile, not company to company, right? So even though it's B2B, it's personal connection, which makes it powerful.
Yeah. Awesome. So what have you found are the best ways to really be leveraging LinkedIn to generate leads?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first thing that you need to focus on is we kind of mentioned it earlier is you got to know who you're trying to talk to first, right? You got to have that target market. So I'm going to assume that a lot of you guys on here have some sort of a focus with your market. But then instead of, taking your LinkedIn profile and turning it into another resume, you actually turn your LinkedIn profile, for lack of a better word, into more of like a sales page. And you make your LinkedIn profile all about your market rather than all about yourself. When you think about it, and maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but like I never go and look at somebody's summary and like get it, blown away by what their skills are and how they got into this industry. But I will listen to their story. I will read and be interested in, what their methodologies are, what some of the things they may have that can help me. And I think that that's where, having a good profile set up is incredibly, incredibly important because it's your first step of the brand, right? And then from there, it's actively building your LinkedIn network every single day. Every single day, you want to build your network with your ideal audience. It's like stocking your own pond of fish, right? And especially if you're playing the long game, like, okay, well, if I can stock my pond with, 10, 20, 30,000 of my ideal prospects, then shoot, I've got a good chance in the future to really make some noise. And I've been at this LinkedIn thing for about 4 years now.
Awesome.
And I've established a good brand for myself on LinkedIn because of that, but it's
Yep.
consistency and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're talking about consistency because I'm in a mindset and have a perspective that I believe consistency is one of the most underrated tactics known to marketers, especially in this season. I mean, it's important not in any season, but definitely in this season. So for those who are like, oh, it's going to be noisy, it may be, but I guarantee you, if you choose to, draw a line in the sand and commit to a strategy where you're creating content every single day, and play the long-term game, you'll win. Like guaranteed. I don't know anybody who has done that who hasn't won. The only people I know who haven't won are the people who are just like doing it when they feel inspired. Because dude, even this podcast, and I've said this publicly, this podcast is fucking hard sometimes. Like to want to create a solo show on Sunday, to find the guest, to have these conversations. It's a fuck ton of work. But it's like you're either committed or you're not, and that's just you choose to play the game or you don't. Just like in football for you, you showed up to do the practices and the hard work, or you didn't.
Yep. No, it's incredibly crucial. I mean, with anything, and that's what I feel like the biggest, most disrespectful thing is when people come out to me, whether they're a client or a prospect or somebody just in conversation, and like, oh, I've created content, it didn't work for me. How long did you create it? Oh, I put a couple posts out. And it's like, it's so disrespectful to the process. Like there's people that are out there doing this every single day and you think that you get to write an article and you should just get traction. Like, no, bullshit. Like you got no chance. So you keep thinking that way. There's more for me, right? And that's one of the keys to cutting through the noise is the repetition, right? Like if I see you once, what people don't really understand is they look at competition as their direct competitor, right? So, hey, who's my direct competitor? Well, it's another coach in my space. No, your competitor's attention.
Yep.
Your competitor is Target, Amazon, Walmart, Apple, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, everything that's pulling their attention from your ideal prospect. That's a competitor. So I've got to be there. And I think that's what's great about social media that people haven't wrapped their mind around is like you can actually create as much noise to a small pond as those big brands affordably if you're doing it right. Obviously not marketing to millions unless you've got a massive budget, but if you're doing it right, you just start building your small pond and market to them and play the long game and boom.
So good. I was actually working on a video and some copy for one of my clients, Subi Zimmerman and her team that we're working on putting out. And there's this limiting belief, and it's relevant to this conversation, which is lots of people think you have to have a massive following to be an influencer, to be able to make money. And that's actually really not the case because it all comes down to relationships. So you're talking about this idea of a small pond. And so if you can generate real relationships with real people in that small pond, there's a lot of money to be made that's going to support the family, that's going to support the business, it's going to support the community if people just commit to the process. And I don't think enough people are talking about that and really buying into that concept that there's some really yummy, tasty, good-sized fish in those small ponds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's the thing about it is like I would almost guarantee that 10 out of 10 people listening to this podcast have never heard of me yet. I'm making a very lucrative living
Yep.
just with my own little tribe.
So
right.
good. So good.
And that's for inspiration for everybody else. Is like, I started in an industry where I had no experience. I'm in the staffing and recruiting industry. That's where I coach. I stumbled into the industry. I had no experience recruiting, no experience doing anything. And in 3 years, I'm making a tremendous amount of noise in the industry. Now, I'll tell you that year one wasn't the same as year three is, but I can tell you that when you get to year three, it's a lot more fun but it's been the commitment. It's been the consistency with the content. And one of the things, along this subject is not being attached to the dopamine rush of what's social media, what you think you need, which is, I got to get likes, I got to get comments, I got to get views, I got to get shares. It's all bullshit, really. Because, when I first started, pushing content, like I wasn't getting a bunch of, engagement, especially when you have B2B, you're typically dealing with, in a lot of ways, a more sophisticated audience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
They're not the ones that like and comment and share. They're the ones that see your stuff. And so what happened for me is I was putting stuff out there and I was like, kind of like, oh man, like I'm not getting any traction. And then all of a sudden, as I was starting to have phone calls with my prospects, like, hey man, I see your stuff everywhere. I love it. I see your stuff everywhere. I love it. And that's been like a recurring thing. Well, now fast forward, now I've got a little bit of all of it. I still get the great feedback, but I also get the likes, the comments, and the engagement because they've seen me. There's a little bit of actual leadership that's going on. And that fires me up for the moment that we're in now. I feel like over the last 3 years, I've been preparing for this moment and I'm so fired up and ready to lead people, through whatever we're going through. I don't know if this is going to be a 3-month thing, a 3-week thing, or a 3-year thing. We don't know, but I'm fired up for whatever it is.
Awesome, dude. I love your certainty. I just fucking honor you for that, dude. What are some common mistakes people make when using LinkedIn?
Connect and pitch. So one of the things that really makes LinkedIn successful, and I didn't talk about it and we haven't really touched on it much, is the inbox. Is actually using the platform, what it's designed for, which is to network. The challenge with it is a couple of years ago, a lot of coaches started teaching these methods where you basically connect with people, and then right away you start to pitch out your services. And a couple of years ago, it actually used to work like a charm a couple of years ago, right? Because nobody else was doing it. Well, now this is where the noise is coming to play. So LinkedIn messaging is still very, very viable. It's still very, very effective. But knowing that the market is basically connecting and going, hey, John, thanks for connecting. Hey, did you know I can get you 15 qualified leads tomorrow? You want to hop on the phone and talk about it? Like if you do that, you're going to get crickets in your responses. Okay. But if you just take more of a long-term, type of a thing, like, hey, John, what's going on, man? Just thanks for being on my network. Looking forward to, being a part of it. Let me know how I can add some value to you. Hey, now that we're connected, you're probably going to see my posts around, online branding and other things that are very specific to the recruiting industry. Looking forward to seeing your stuff too. Talk to you soon. And just starting a conversation, right, is incredibly powerful. And that's where you kind of want to make the shift. But the messaging box, one of the biggest things you don't want to do is you don't want to connect and then just pitch to somebody right away. That goes back into playing the long game, right? Yeah. And you really want to find some things that are genuine and conversational, okay? Now, if you're doing it manually, it's a lot easier to do this because then I can actually take some time. You could create a very simple plan. 3 profiles a day. Go visit 3 profiles. Look at their profile. Read some articles, and then go find a question about that article and reach out to them with the message and say, "Hey, John. Hey, I just read your article on ABC. Curious. What were you thinking about this, that, or the other?" Somebody wrote the article. You're actually commenting and asking a question about it. They're going to respond like 90% of the time.
Absolutely.
Because you took the time.
Absolutely.
The other thing that's big on LinkedIn with the messaging is the automation part, right? So you can actually automate this process, and I highly recommend that you do it. But when you automate it, you have to have a very, very good pulse on your market because now we are going into mass. Now there's a big push of, people because you're seeing all these messages that are saying, hey, the automation approach doesn't work. It works. It works very good. But you have to know your market. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be, again, you got to be creative. So one of the things with messaging that I always remind people is, people will start to go and they'll either be coached by somebody and they'll get scripts, or they will study other people and they'll take their script and then they just go try to plug and play that. The whole thing with your messaging is it has to come from exactly who you are. So what I recommend is write out a message or type out a message and then read it. And if it doesn't sound like it would come from Donnie's mouth, then it's garbage. Right. So like I'll use words instead of trying to be informal. I'll be like, hey man, super random. I just started this Facebook group around blah, 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 you know, and those messages every day, 5 to 10 people, you know, conversating with me. So that's a whole strategy in itself, but the connect and pitch is like the number one thing I can tell you to stay away from. Do not connect and try to sell your services because everybody else has tried to do it.
So 2 things on this. So one, because you talked about automation versus organic, do you think, because I believe this in the webinar game, people want to be like, oh, evergreen, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things Jonathan and I really help people understand is like, hey, let's slow down. Let's do this live several times so we can make sure it's working. We can pivot quickly. If it's not working, let's know our numbers before we go to automating. Is it the same thing there? Like, hey, let's do it organically so you get the feel of it. You know it's working. You have a pulse on your market. And once that's working, now we transition to automation. Is that kind of the best advice?
I think you can do it. I think I don't know if there's a right or wrong way. I just think that the way is the test.
Okay.
Right? So one of the advantages of using automation to test is you can have
do it
that
in mass.
You can do it at mass. So the challenge with it is you may go through 100 people and hear crickets. Well,
okay.
At least you know you can. With automation tools now, you can still pivot very quickly. It's not like an evergreen webinar, obviously, where there's a lot of setup, a lot of thing. You know, you're talking about tweaking a message. So I usually have people just start automation right away because we can test faster and
have more data points, I assume.
Exactly. There's more that we can go off of.
Nice.
There's no doubt that being direct is going to be the most effective way because you can get very specific onto somebody's profile.
Awesome.
And I'll tell you, I mean, here's a hack that I highly recommend. Go pull up somebody's LinkedIn profile and record a Loom video or a Vidyard or whatever you use and talk about their profile. And if you know anything about those tools that I mentioned, you can actually create a little custom message. So I'll go record somebody's profile and then I copy and paste that link in their messaging box in LinkedIn. And then when it pops up, it'll say, hey, Donnie, I liked your article on X, Y, and Z. And then they see a picture of themselves in the template of the preview of the link. Like, who's not going to click on that?
So
right?
good.
So there's some gold for you guys.
So good. Now, what about the algorithm? Because we talked about messaging, playing a long-term game, which I'm assuming, because this is how Facebook is, and I'm very familiar with Facebook, that you allow your content that you're creating to pretty much do the heavy lifting and the indoctrination of the mindsets and the skill sets and your offers and all of that. Yep. Is it the same, similar, like meaning the algorithm, you know, you have time decay and your weight and all of it. Is it similar in your affinity and messaging back and forth?
There's definitely some similarities. I think that LinkedIn can kind of, LinkedIn, you know, kind of the theory around it is you have to have a good push in your first couple hours with good engagement. And if you can get good engagement within like the first 2 hours, I don't have any proof around this, but there's a lot of people that say that like if you can get 15 comments within the first 2 hours, then there's a chance that things can go wild for you. But it's like anything that all comes back into is the quality content. Yep. If you don't have quality content, it doesn't matter what tactic or strategy you're using to try to get more views. But you know, I'll give you an example. I posted something on Friday that actually went pretty wild. It's gotten over 10,000 views organically now. And most of those views is front loaded on Friday, but I'm still, where are we at, Wednesday? So not quite a week away. I've probably picked up another couple thousand views and people are still resharing it and commenting on it. So, they don't die as quick. They'll hang out there, but you have to get the front end for it to hang out there for a while.
That makes sense. Now, do you recommend people post daily?
I recommend you post daily.
Okay.
The thing about LinkedIn is different. What people need to understand is it's not like a Facebook where people are just hanging out and chilling most of the time, right? Facebook, we get on, we sedate, right? LinkedIn, there's usually a little bit more of an objective. So it's important because of the way the algorithm works to constantly be posting. And one of the things, if you post an article, that I recommend is when you post it on the day that you actually create the article and post it, then you reshare that thing like 3 or 4 times in that day because not everybody sees your stuff. Gotcha. The algorithm is different that way. So you can't, people are always like, I don't want to post too much and get like, look, there's been so many of my clients that I'll be like, hey, do you see that post I did today on LinkedIn? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, there you go. So your clients aren't seeing all your stuff either, right? And that's the thing. I don't even care what platform. Like, push is what I always say.
And so when you say share it, do you recommend creating a new, not description, but kind of a new little hey, I wrote this thingy, this is what it's about, share, or do you just share?
So I will share. There's a couple things you can do. I always kind of share with a new little message, right?
Okay, that makes
From a
sense.
different angle.
Yep.
And then the other thing you can consider doing is pivoting your pictures. Okay. And because the picture is what's going to usually break up the feed. And so sometimes you can consider rotating those pictures out. One of the things I recommend with pictures on LinkedIn is make them human.
Mm.
Even if it's you, or if it's something you bought from, Shutterstock or whatever it is. I don't even know what these places are, but people really are attracted to other people on LinkedIn.
And so when you say make sure they're human, do you just mean like selfie photos? Do you mean lifestyle photos? What do you mean?
Anything. Well, I'm going to say things that are going to resonate with the industry,
Okay.
right? So, like, if you're going to write an article about healthcare, then you're going to want to have some things with people in white jackets, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
If you're going to write an article about skill trades, then you're going to have people in skill trade pictures, construction, then construction, right? So, I think that's basic branding in general, but
Gotcha.
it's really having people in your picture, whether it's you or whether it's stock photos.
Okay. Now you talked about video because you created videos, picking up
Mm-hmm.
steam. So how important is video for using LinkedIn to generate leads?
It's a gold mine.
Awesome.
So the cool thing about LinkedIn is it actually has what's called native video, and a lot of people don't know about this. So LinkedIn, you can actually upload a video right into their platform, and that's the way you do it. You never want to go to YouTube and then share your link of your video, because you're not going to get near as many views. So if you can go and you basically create your video wherever you store it on your computer, you just upload it directly, then now it's a native video on LinkedIn, and then you get the opportunity to kind of write some copy around the video as well. Um, it's the same thing. I think that LinkedIn really likes video. I always believe that video's got to be a part of your plan. I think it cuts the gap of know, like, and trust faster than anything else out there. But I think statistically, still, you're probably going to get more, if you're concerned with this, you're going to get more views on a written post than you would a video. But video is like where, for me, I get connection. I mean, when I get people on my calls, they're like, "Man, I see your videos everywhere. I like what you have to say," and they feel like they know me more than if I were just writing actual content.
Man, I like this, dude. You're inspiring me to like do more videos. There was a season of my life where I was doing like a video a day, and I've gotten away from that. Now I'm like, maybe it's time to go back to the basics and like just video a day, no concern about views, just show up and preach.
Yep. Well, I always just think in content, video, whatever, if it's written or video, I mean, the bottom line is all it takes is one. I view it as like a fishing pole in the water.
Yeah.
If I'm messaging people, that's a fishing pole. If I'm endorsing somebody, that's a fishing pole. Or fishing line, I should say. If I'm creating a video, it's a fishing line, right? And then if I have all these fishing lines in the water, eventually, boop, I'm going to catch something.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really, I think, the strategy that works on LinkedIn is when you have a good inbox combined with, a good news feed. And one of the things that we haven't talked about that's great about the LinkedIn news feed is it's not just for your network. It expands across the entire brand, so that's where the hashtags really come into play. And as people see it, then the algorithm is going to take over and start sharing it to more relevant people. Right. So I've had a couple of posts that have gone viral where I've gotten like 130,000 organic views on it. And the people that are engaging with it are all my ideal market. Now I'm not connected with, 3/4 of them.
Sure.
But that's really where there's a big opportunity on LinkedIn. You just can't do that stuff on Facebook. It just doesn't work that way unless you're paying money.
Yep. Yeah,
right?
It's true.
Yeah. So that's one of the big advantages. You can expand outside of your pond once you build it.
What about like LinkedIn groups? I know back in the day that was a thing. I know Facebook groups they picked up momentum. They're still generating momentum, especially I think heading into this season. I think more than ever. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll go ahead and call this, and maybe I'm wrong. I think now more than ever, it's so important to build a community and lead that community. So with that being said, do you think LinkedIn groups is a good place, or what do you think about that?
Working with Jonathan a couple months back, I was, we decided to create the Facebook group. And then as I started to create the Facebook group, I was actually cross-pollinating my platforms, and I was inviting people from LinkedIn to come join my Facebook group. And naturally, as you would imagine, a lot of people would say, "Hey, I don't use Facebook." So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm already doing the content. I might as well just start a group here on LinkedIn. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No interaction, no engagement, no anything from LinkedIn. So I've honestly just kind of stopped that effort because I just haven't gotten as much out of it. So my story is that the LinkedIn groups just aren't as effective as they once used to be. And Facebook groups are far more effective.
So if I hear you correctly, you're still cross-pollinating. You're still doing what you do on LinkedIn. So you're continue to expand your pond, put bigger and bigger fish in there. And as a result, you're also taking some of those out of that pond and putting them into a stock pond in the
Exactly.
group.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And this is my, philosophy on cutting through the noise is, you're going to see me everywhere. So, there's a spot for LinkedIn, there's a spot for Facebook, and, some people indulge more. And like I said, go back into where do people hang out? People hang out more on Facebook.
Yep.
Right. And so there's always this misconception, especially in this B2B world, that, oh, well, my market they don't go on Facebook. Like, bullshit. Like, so because they wear a suit and tie when they go to work, they don't have a life after that or something like that. I don't get it, and so it's really just people's inability to grasp, how to make it successful and how to make it work. Because I can tell you, I work with some of the most successful people in my industry, and they're all on Facebook.
Yeah.
Again, not all, because I've just told you that some people got off, but that's more for personal reasons from the platform. But if, and that's one of the things that, I've been talking about this, that I always encourage people, some people pound their chest and be like, oh, I'm not on Facebook. Like, congratulations, you're losing a fortune. It's not about do I like Facebook and all their policies and what their political beliefs are and this, that, and the other, and all the shit we can talk about. No, I don't care. But do I want to leverage the platform to generate revenue? That's all it's about for me, period. Now, don't get that wrong. I want to connect with people, and that's the main thing in order for me to get the ultimate outcome, right? And so I'm always looking for places where I can build connection.
Awesome, dude.
Facebook's a great place for it.
Do you, let's see, there's a question I want to ask you about this, which was, hang on, where was I going with that thought? Hang on one second. Yes. So you have a group, Facebook, you have LinkedIn. Are you having to double up on content creation? Or are you just kind of broadcasting the same content between the two?
I typically just broadcast between the two. I don't have enough time to.
That's brilliant.
My
it's perfect.
Post and my Facebook post. I think there's a lot. Again, I think there's a lot of stories that people tell themselves on. You need to be this certain way on LinkedIn, and you need to be this certain way on Facebook. I don't buy into that shit. I'm Donnie wherever I am. This is my platform to use it. Are there some nuances that I'll make here and there? Yeah. But not to the point where I don't have enough time, I don't have enough time. I know that creating is my priority, and I don't have enough time to create for this and create for that. I'm going to create one thing. Like I said, I might make a couple shifts in terms of certain things, but nothing crazy.
Awesome. So you've been on this journey, man, 2008, 2009, you're here, crushing. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some wisdom that you have now, then that would really allow you to help collapse some time and generate momentum quicker back then. What do you think that wisdom would have been?
Stay out of my head and just create.
Awesome.
When I was working with my dad, I was creating out of necessity, but I still was pushing through a lot of fear, honestly. I was like a lot of people. When I was putting myself on a camera, I didn't feel overly comfortable. In fact, if you want inspiration, go to Flooring My Life TV on YouTube and look at my very first video, and you'll laugh your ass off. We were actually using flip video cameras at the time.
Yep, I remember them. I'm just curious, was it a Kodak KI8? That's what I had back then.
I don't believe it was that one. It was a white, I don't know which one it was. I can't remember. I think it was actually just called Flip Video. I think they came up with a brand.
Yep.
And so that was our first ones. And I was coming straight off of a divorce, so I had no confidence in myself. And I was just like, all right, here I am, some guy scrubby as can be with a brown shirt. But then if you watch that channel evolve, by the end, I had a green screen. I had a full-fledged, editor for my videos, and my stuff was completely dialed. But where I'm going with this is once I went into a new space, then I started doing all of this, I'm not good enough, nobody's going to listen to me, and this, that, and the other. So I think it's going back into, some of the things we talked about with the mindset and what I came back from, the Uprising event, is just being okay with myself. And putting stuff out there and doing it. The biggest thing I'll leave you with is doing it without attachment to the result.
So good. So good.
Just do it as part of the process. And that's where the results will happen.
So if people follow your advice here, what do you know is possible for them?
Anything. Mm-hmm. I live a, what I would call a very successful life for myself, my own definition, which for me is freedom. I'm a big family man. I can do whatever I want with my family whenever I want. I coach my kids' sports teams. I take my family on the vacations that we want to go on. I live in a nice house here in the Bay Area. I have all I need. I don't need anything else with where I'm at in my life. And that's freeing. As we're sitting here going through this, this shelter in place lockdown, my life doesn't change. In fact, this is an opportunity for it to get even busier and better, but by playing, the long game, and by busting through the limiting beliefs and barriers, and always, going after self-improvement, it's been incredibly rewarding for me. And there's, I guess the biggest thing is you can create whatever life you really want, and you have to believe that, because it's certainly true. I came from, like I said, I came into this industry. I was literally a nobody in this industry, with no experience, with no anything. And 3 years later, I'm being asked to speak on stages. I'm asked, to do different conferences and things like that. And, I'm a thought leader in the space. I'm not saying I'm a celebrity or anything like that, but I've built a brand, and trust me, I didn't think I would, and I did. And so can you.
Awesome. If people want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you, they want to learn how to generate leads with LinkedIn, what's the best way for them to reach out, connect with you? Do you have a program? Like, what can we help them with?
Yeah. So, a couple places to connect, on LinkedIn would be a great place to start. It's just Donnie Gupton. Pretty much everywhere, it's just Donnie Gupton. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it's all the same. I've kept it easy for you. If you head over to my website, you'll kind of start to see some of the methodologies and things that I teach. My market is really, my core market is staffing and recruiting companies. I help them, build a relevant brand that attracts clients to them. But my methods really will work for, I don't want to say everyone, but it'll work for a lot of people that are in B2B. I just choose to play in that space. So I've got a, mentorship program that I help people step by step go through this. So, you can also reach out to me at Donnie at DonnieGupton.com is my email.
Cool, dude. Well, dude, thank you so much for being here, sharing your gift with us, and just being you, brother. Like, I have so much just respect, and yeah, dude, just respect for you as a human, as a man, as a father. So, dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, right on, man. I appreciate you having me on, and right back at you. We've been part of each other's lives for a couple months now, and you've already had a massive impact on me. So can't tell you how much I appreciate you as well.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
So there you have it, my friend, Donnie Gupton. And man, I love this episode. I felt so inspired after talking with him. It was just like full of some like great reminders, like reminders to double down on yourself, reminders to like keep your light shining. And just to know, like at the end, it's completely worth it. I know if you'll take the advice shared with you in this episode and you get to shipping your message consistently, you'll make it through the season, and you're going to come out on the other side with more momentum, more growth, and you're going to be ahead of your rivals in your industry. So I really hope this episode has served you. I know it certainly inspired me. If you want some more motivation to keep your head up in the season, then make sure you join my Shift community. It'll help you stay in a place of power and lead your industry from the front lines. This way, you're positioned to skyrocket your income and impact. You can request to join that community of over 200 people right now for free by simply going to ajamex.com/community. Again, that's www.ajamex.com/community. So hope to see you in there. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace. Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amix podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamex.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.